Hello, and welcome back to the Easy Speak podcast. I'm so happy you're here today. This is the place where we slow down, we have real conversations, and we help you grow your English one word, one idea, one moment at a time.
Hey everyone! Great to be here again. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Seriously, you picked a great episode to start with. And if you're a regular listener, thank you. We really appreciate you coming back.
Today's topic is something I have been thinking about for a long time. And honestly, it's something I think most people can relate to. We're going to talk about what happens when you care too much. About what people think. About what others say. About being liked, being accepted, being seen in a certain way.
Yeah, this is a big one. I think a lot of people know that feeling. You say something, and then you spend the next 2 hours wondering if it came out wrong. Or you post something online and you keep checking to see how people respond.
Exactly. And it's exhausting. It really is. So today we want to explore that idea together. Why do we care so much? Is it a problem? What can we actually do about it? And most importantly, how do we find balance?
I love that word balance. Because it's not about not caring at all. That's a different problem. It's about finding that right middle place.
Right. And we'll get into all of that. But first, let's just take a breath. You're here. You're listening. And that already means something. You're making time for yourself today, and that's worth celebrating.
100%. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What does it even mean to care too much? Like, what does that look like in everyday life?
I think it looks like a lot of things. It can look like always saying yes to people even when you really want to say no. It can look like changing your opinion the moment someone pushes back. It can look like not expressing how you truly feel because you're afraid of how it will land.
Or it can look like spending a lot of mental energy on other people's reactions. Like you replay conversations in your head. You think, wait, did I say that wrong? Did I upset them? Do they still like me?
Yes. And the interesting thing is, most of the time, the other person has already moved on. They're not even thinking about it. But we're still running the whole conversation on repeat in our minds.
That's such a good point. It's like we're watching a movie that the other person has already forgotten about.
Exactly. And that's one of the first things I want us to think about today. The gap between how much we think about a situation and how much the other person is actually thinking about it. That gap is usually very, very large.
Can I share a quick example? Because I think this happens to everyone.
Please? Yes.
So a few months ago, I was in a meeting. And I made a joke. And nobody laughed. Complete silence. And I felt awful. I thought, oh no, was that offensive? Was it just not funny? Did I read the room completely wrong? I was embarrassed for the rest of the meeting. I went home that evening thinking about it. I woke up the next morning still thinking about it. And then a few days later, I saw one of the people who was in that meeting. And I said something like, "Hey, sorry about that comment the other day." And they looked at me completely confused. They had no memory of it at all.
That is such a perfect example. And I think almost everyone listening right now has had a moment like that. You carry something around for days, and the other person didn't even register it.
It made me realize how much of my emotional energy was going to something that only existed in my own head.
That's a really powerful realization. And it connects to something called the spotlight effect. Let me explain what that means, because it's a useful concept.
Oh, I've heard of this. Go ahead.
So the spotlight effect is basically the tendency we have to believe that other people are noticing us much more than they actually are. It's like we imagine there's a spotlight shining on us all the time. Every mistake we make, every awkward moment, every bad hair day, we think everyone sees it and everyone cares.
But in reality, most people are too busy thinking about their own spotlight.
Exactly. Everyone is the star of their own movie. They're focused on their own lives, their own problems, their own awkward moments. They're not watching yours as closely as you think.
That's actually very freeing when you really sit with it. Let me use that word, freeing. What does freeing mean?
Freeing means something that gives you a sense of freedom. Something that removes a weight from your shoulders. Something that makes you feel lighter and less restricted.
Right. Like when you understand the spotlight effect, it can feel freeing. Because you realize you don't have to perform for an audience that isn't really watching.
I like that. You don't have to perform for an audience that isn't really watching. That could be the theme of this whole episode.
I'll take it. So why do we do it, though? Why do we care so much about what people think? Is it just something in our nature?
I think it is, actually, an understanding that can help us be a little kinder to ourselves about it. A long time ago, humans lived in small groups, small communities. And in those communities, being accepted by the group was literally a matter of survival. If you were rejected by the tribe, you were in danger. You were alone. You couldn't hunt alone. You couldn't protect yourself alone. You needed the group.
So caring about what others think was actually useful back then.
Very useful. It kept you safe. It helped you cooperate. It helped you stay connected. But the problem is, our brains haven't fully caught up with modern life. We're not living in small tribes anymore. Being criticized by a stranger online is not a threat to our survival. But our brain still reacts like it is.
So when someone leaves a negative comment on your video or gives you a strange look on the street, your brain treats it almost like a warning signal.
Yes. Like a false alarm. The alarm is real. The feeling is real. But the actual threat isn't there.
That's fascinating. And a little bit sad at the same time.
It is. But here's what I find hopeful about it. Once you know where the feeling comes from, you have more choice about what to do with it. You can say, okay, my brain is sending me this signal. I understand why. But I also know it's not a real danger. I can acknowledge the feeling without letting it take over.
Acknowledge. That's an interesting word. What do you mean by acknowledge?
Acknowledge means to notice something and accept that it exists. Not to fight it. Not to push it away. But to simply say, yes, I see you, I hear you, and I'm choosing what to do next.
So instead of trying to stop yourself from caring, you just acknowledge the caring and then make a conscious decision.
Exactly. It's much more peaceful than trying to fight your own feelings.
I want to talk about something that I think is underneath all of this, and that's the fear of judgment. I think a lot of the reason we care so much is because we're afraid of being judged.
Yes, deeply afraid. And judgment means different things to different people. For some people, the biggest fear is being judged as stupid or incompetent. For others, it's being judged as selfish or unkind. For others, it's simply being seen as not good enough.
And we shape so much of our behavior around avoiding those judgments.
We do. We dress a certain way. We say certain things. We hold back certain thoughts. We laugh at jokes we don't find funny. We agree with opinions we don't fully share. All to avoid being judged in a way that feels threatening.
When you list it all out like that, it sounds exhausting.
It is. And the thing is, we often don't even notice we're doing it. A lot of it has become automatic. It's just part of how we move through the world.
So, how do we start to notice it? How do we become more aware of it?
I think the first step is to start asking yourself a simple question in different moments of your day. And the question is, am I doing this because I genuinely want to? Or am I doing this because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't?
That's a powerful question. Am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm afraid?
And the answer won't always be clear. Sometimes it's both. But even asking the question creates a small moment of awareness. And awareness is where everything begins.
I want to bring up something slightly different but connected. And that's social media. Because I think social media has made this whole issue so much bigger, so much more intense.
Completely. I think social media is like a machine for generating approval-seeking behavior. You post something. You wait. You watch the numbers. You feel good when people respond positively. You feel anxious or sad when they don't. And it trains your brain to keep doing it.
It turns normal human behavior, wanting to be liked, wanting to connect, into something much more constant and measurable. You can literally count how many people liked what you said.
And that creates this strange loop. The more you measure your worth by those numbers, the more you need them to feel okay. And the more you need them to feel okay, the more anxious you feel when they're not there.
Loop. Let's use that word. A loop is a pattern that keeps repeating. Like a circle. You go around and around the same path.
Yes. And the key to breaking a loop is to find the exit. To find the moment where you can step off the circle and choose a different direction.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we can actually do. Because I think people are listening and nodding along, and they're feeling very seen. But they also want something practical. Something they can actually use.
Absolutely. Let's do that. So I want to start with something that might sound simple, but it's actually quite challenging in practice. And that is, get clear on your own values.
What do you mean by values?
Values are the things that matter most to you. Not to your parents. Not to your friends. Not to society. To you personally. Things like honesty, creativity, kindness, freedom, learning. These are just examples. Your values are unique to you.
And why does knowing your values help with caring too much?
Because when you're clear on what you value, you have an internal reference point. Instead of constantly looking outward for approval, you can look inward and ask, does this choice reflect what I truly care about?
So your values become like a compass.
Yes. A compass. I love that image. When you have a compass, you don't need everyone else to tell you which direction to go. You can check your own compass.
That's beautiful. And I think it takes practice, right? It's not something you can just do once. It's something you have to come back to, over and over.
Absolutely. Especially because life is always changing. What you value at 20 might be different from what you value at 30 or 40. So checking in with your values regularly is part of the process.
I want to talk about something called people pleasing. Because I think it's directly connected to caring too much. And I think it's worth naming it clearly.
People-pleasing is a term for a pattern of behavior where someone prioritizes other people's needs and approval above their own. A people-pleaser is someone who has a hard time saying no, who avoids conflict at almost any cost, and who often feels responsible for how other people feel.
And I think it's important to say that people pleasing often comes from a kind place. Like, people pleasers are usually very sensitive, very caring people. It's not a character flaw.
You're absolutely right about that. And that's such an important point. Many people-pleasers grew up in environments where keeping the peace was important, where their needs came second, where love felt conditional. And they learned, very early, that caring for others and making others happy was the safe thing to do.
So it was a survival strategy.
Exactly. Just like we talked about the tribe earlier. For many people, people-pleasing was a way to stay emotionally safe, to keep the peace at home, to avoid punishment or rejection.
But then it becomes a habit. And you carry it into adulthood, into friendships, into work, into every relationship.
And in adult life, that strategy often stops working. It can lead to resentment. Because you're constantly giving and not receiving. It can lead to exhaustion. It can lead to a feeling of not knowing who you really are, because you've spent so long being who others need you to be.
That's such a sad place to be. Not knowing who you are because you've always shaped yourself around others.
It is. And recovery from that, and I call it recovery because it is a genuine process, starts with very small, gentle steps. Like saying no to one small thing. Like sharing a genuine opinion even if it might not be agreed with. Like choosing yourself in one small moment.
Small steps. I want to stay with that idea. Because I think sometimes people think, okay, I need to completely transform and stop caring about what anyone thinks. And that's very overwhelming.
It is. And it's also not the goal. The goal is not to become someone who doesn't care at all. That would actually make you less empathetic, less connected, less human.
Right. We need to care. We need to be able to receive feedback. We need to be open to others' perspectives. That's healthy.
The goal is to care without losing yourself. To be open without being controlled. To listen to others without needing their approval to feel okay.
care without losing yourself. I want to hold on to that phrase.
Me too. So let's talk about one of the practical things I find really useful. And that is the practice of asking, whose opinion actually matters here?
What do you mean?
Well, when we worry about what people think, we often don't distinguish between different people. We just feel a general anxiety about what people think. But if you stop and ask yourself specifically, whose opinion matters to me in this situation? The answer is often very small. It might be one or two people who genuinely know you and care about you. It might be an expert whose feedback can actually help you improve. Not everyone. Not strangers. Not the internet.
So you're narrowing the circle.
Exactly. You're narrowing the circle. Instead of feeling responsible for the opinion of every single person who might be watching or judging, you focus on the small, trusted circle of people whose perspective is actually worth considering.
And I think that can be genuinely freeing. Because once you shrink that circle, the noise gets so much quieter.
It does. The noise gets so much quieter. And you start to realize that most of the opinions you were worried about were from people who didn't know the full picture, who didn't know your intentions, who didn't know your heart.
Speaking of hearts, let's talk about something emotionally heavy. Because I think one of the biggest drivers of caring too much is rejection. The fear of being rejected.
Oh, yes. Rejection is one of the most painful human experiences. And researchers have actually found that social rejection activates some of the same areas of the brain as physical pain. So when someone rejects you, whether it's a friend, a partner, a colleague, a stranger, it genuinely hurts. In a real, physical way.
That explains a lot. Because sometimes the hurt of rejection feels so extreme, so out of proportion, that it's confusing. But if your brain is treating it like physical pain, that makes more sense.
And because we know rejection hurts, we do a lot of things to avoid it. We stay quiet when we want to speak. We don't apply for the job because we're afraid of being turned down. We don't say how we feel because we're afraid of hearing no. We shape ourselves around what we think others want so that we give them no reason to push us away.
It's a form of self-protection.
A very understandable form, but also one that has a cost. Because every time you don't speak, you lose a little piece of your own voice. Every time you hold back who you are, you move a little further from yourself.
I want to introduce a phrase here that I've been thinking about. And that phrase is living from the inside out.
I love that. Say more about it.
Living from the inside out means making decisions and choices based on what's happening inside you, your values, your feelings, your true needs, rather than working backwards from what you think other people want and then adjusting yourself to fit that.
Most people live from the outside in. They read the room first. They scan for cues. They decide what's acceptable based on the environment. And then they figure out what version of themselves to show.
And there's nothing wrong with reading a room. That's social intelligence. But when it completely replaces your inner voice, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yes. When you've been so trained to look outward that you no longer know what you actually feel, what you actually want, what you actually think, that's when you've gone too far.
How do you reconnect with that inner voice? Because I think for a lot of people, that voice has been very quiet for a very long time.
I think the first step is simply creating space. Space that is not filled with other people's input. Time alone. Time away from your phone. Time in silence. Because in silence, eventually, something starts to surface. A thought. A feeling. A preference you didn't know you had.
Journaling is another tool, right?
Incredibly powerful. Just writing, without a filter, without worrying if it makes sense, without thinking about who might read it. Just letting what's inside come out onto the page. It can reveal so much.
I started journaling a while ago and I was actually surprised by what came out. Because when I'm just speaking to people or going through my day, I don't always access those deeper thoughts. But when I write, things come up that I didn't even know were there.
That's exactly it. And those hidden thoughts and feelings, they're the real you. The you that doesn't perform. The you that doesn't worry about the audience.
I want to pause here and do a little vocabulary moment. Because we've used some words and phrases that might be new for our listeners, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Good idea. Let's do it.
So we talked about the word resentment earlier. Can you explain that one?
Yes. Resentment is a feeling of bitterness or anger that builds up over time, usually when you feel treated unfairly or when you give more than you receive and it goes unacknowledged. It's like a slow burn. It's not explosive anger. It's more like a quiet, deep frustration that collects inside you.
So if someone always gives in to others and never sets boundaries, over time they might feel resentment toward those same people they were trying to please.
Exactly. Resentment. And the important thing is to notice it early, before it damages a relationship.
Another word we used was conditional. Conditional love or conditional approval.
Conditional means that something is only given if certain requirements are met. So conditional love is love that says, I will love you if you do what I want, if you behave a certain way, if you succeed in a certain area. Unconditional love is love that doesn't require anything in return. It's just given freely.
And many people who care too much about approval grew up receiving conditional love. So they learned to perform, to achieve, to please, in order to earn that love.
Exactly. And the sad cycle is that even when you earn conditional love, it never fully satisfies. Because deep down you know it could be taken away if you stop performing. So the anxiety never really goes away.
Conditional. Unconditional. Got it. And one more, we used the word empathy earlier. Let's make sure that's clear.
Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. It's like stepping into someone else's shoes and seeing the world through their eyes. Not just intellectually understanding their situation, but feeling a sense of what it's like for them.
And this is actually one of the beautiful things about people who care a lot about others. They usually have a lot of empathy. They feel things deeply. They're very sensitive to the emotions around them.
Yes. And sensitivity is a gift. It makes you a good friend, a good listener, a good partner. The challenge is learning to protect that sensitivity instead of letting it be used to control you.
Protect your sensitivity. I like that framing. Not get rid of it. Protect it.
Exactly. Because a world with less sensitivity would be a poorer world. We need people who feel deeply. We just also need those people to feel safe and grounded enough that they can set healthy limits.
Let's talk about the idea of what I'll call the opinion gap. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while. The idea that the opinions that hurt us most are often the ones that match our own inner critic.
Oh, say more about that.
So imagine someone says something critical to you, and it slides off. It doesn't really hurt. But then someone says something else critical, and it hits deep. It stays with you for a week. Why the difference?
Because the second one touched something you already believe about yourself.
Exactly. The opinion that hurts most is usually one that confirms something you secretly worry is true. So, in a way, other people's opinions are like mirrors. They don't create the wound, they just reflect it.
That's profound. So the real work isn't just to care less about what people think. It's to heal the inner beliefs that make those opinions so powerful.
Right. If someone calls you stupid and you have deep confidence in your intelligence, it doesn't land. But if you already fear you're not smart enough, that same comment can devastate you.
So caring too much about opinions is often a signal of something unhealed inside. Something that needs care and attention.
And that's a compassionate way to look at it. Not as a weakness, not as a flaw, but as a signal.
I always believe in listening to signals. Because signals are information. And information helps us grow.
Let's talk about relationships. Because I think this topic shows up in relationships in very specific ways. And I want to explore that for a few minutes.
Yes. Let's. Because I think one of the most common places people pleasing and caring too much shows up is in friendships and romantic relationships.
How so?
Well, in a friendship, for example, if you care too much about keeping the peace, you might never address problems when they arise. Your friend does something that hurts you. But instead of talking about it, you smile and say everything is fine. And inside, the resentment builds. The distance builds.
And the friendship slowly hollows out. You're there, but you're not really there. You're performing the friendship without actually experiencing it.
Yes. And at some point, you realize you don't feel truly known by this person. Because you've never shown them the real you. You've only shown them the version you thought they would like.
And in romantic relationships, I think it can get even more intense. Because the stakes feel even higher.
They do. When you care deeply about someone, the fear of losing them can make the people-pleasing even stronger. So you compromise more than you should. You accept things you're not comfortable with. You reshape yourself to fit what you think they want.
And eventually you end up in a relationship where you're not seen, not heard, not truly valued, because you never let yourself be truly known.
And the painful irony is that authentic connection, the real, deep kind, is only possible when you show up honestly. When you bring the real you, with your actual thoughts and feelings and needs.
Authentic. Let's use that word. Authentic means real, genuine, honest. Not a performance. Not a mask. Something that truly reflects who you are inside.
An authentic relationship is one where you feel safe enough to be yourself. Where you don't have to manage your image or curate your personality. Where you can be imperfect and still feel loved.
That sounds like such a relief. And I think many people are deeply hungry for that kind of connection, but they're afraid to create it because it requires vulnerability.
Vulnerability. Now there's a word. Vulnerability means being willing to be seen as you truly are, even when that means showing your imperfections, your doubts, your fears. It means opening up and accepting that the other person might respond in a way that hurts.
And yet, paradoxically, vulnerability is the doorway to real connection. When you're willing to be seen, really seen, that's when meaningful relationships become possible.
Breen Brown, the researcher who spent years studying this topic, has a wonderful idea about this. She says that vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually one of the most courageous things a person can do.
That reframes everything. Showing up and being seen, that takes courage. Pretending to be okay all the time, that's the easier path. The harder thing is to say, "This is who I am. I hope you accept me. But I'm going to be honest regardless."
And here's something I want to say clearly to everyone listening right now. You don't have to earn your place in a relationship. You don't have to perform your worth. You don't have to constantly manage how you're perceived. You are allowed to just be.
Just be. I want to sit with that for a moment. Because I think for a lot of people, those are very unfamiliar words.
They are. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need to be more, do more, achieve more, present more. And the idea of just being feels almost revolutionary.
Let's talk about something else that connects to this. And that's the inner critic. The voice in your head that constantly evaluates and criticizes everything you do.
Oh, the inner critic. Most people know that voice very well. It's the one that says, "That was embarrassing. Why did you say that? You're not good enough." People can see right through you.
And what's interesting is that for many people, the inner critic is much louder and much harsher than any external critic could ever be.
We say things to ourselves that we would never say to a friend. If a friend made a small mistake and came to you upset, you wouldn't say, "Oh yes, you really messed that up. Everyone noticed. You should be ashamed." You would say, "It's okay. We all make mistakes. You're still a good person."
So why is it so hard to say that to ourselves?
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. A lot of the inner critic's voice is actually the voice of past experiences. Parents, teachers, peers, situations where you were criticized or made to feel not enough. And those voices got internalized. They became your own inner voice.
So the inner critic is often not even originally yours.
Right. It was given to you. And part of growing and healing is gently identifying those voices and asking, is this actually true? Is this helpful? Or is this just an old fear trying to keep me small?
Keep me small. I find that phrase really striking. The idea that some of our inner voices are actually trying to make us smaller, more manageable, less visible.
Because visibility can feel dangerous when you've been hurt. When you've shown yourself and been rejected. When you've been loud and been told to be quiet. Staying small feels like staying safe.
But staying small means not growing, not connecting, not living fully.
So the work is learning to take up space again. Slowly. Gently. with compassion toward yourself.
I want to talk about one more thing before we start wrapping up. And that is the idea of letting go. Because I think people often misunderstand what it means to let go of caring too much.
What do you mean by misunderstanding?
I think some people imagine that letting go means becoming cold or indifferent. Like, oh, I just don't care anymore. About anything. About anyone. And they might even think that's a kind of strength.
But it's not. Real strength is not indifference. Real strength is caring, and choosing wisely what to do with that caring.
Yes. Letting go doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop allowing feelings to drive every decision. It means you can feel the anxiety of being judged and still choose to speak. You can feel the sting of criticism and still trust your direction.
It's like weather. You don't control whether it rains. But you can choose whether to go outside, whether to carry an umbrella, whether to let a cloudy day define your whole week.
I love that. The weather metaphor. Feelings are like weather. They move through you. They're real. They have an impact. But they don't have to be permanent, and they don't have to control every action.
And when you practice this over time, something beautiful happens. You start to feel more stable, more grounded, less like a boat being tossed around by every wave of opinion, and more like an anchor that holds.
Grounded. That's such an important word in this conversation. When someone is grounded, they have a stable sense of who they are. They don't get easily knocked off course by external events.
And being grounded doesn't mean being rigid. You can still be open, flexible, curious. But underneath that flexibility is a core that doesn't get erased when someone disagrees with you, or judges you, or chooses not to include you.
I want to offer something to listeners who might be struggling with this. Something concrete.
Please.
I want to suggest a small practice. At the end of each day, just before you sleep, ask yourself 2 questions. First, whose opinion did I worry about today that actually didn't matter? And second, what did I do today that felt truly like me?
I love those questions. The first one helps you become aware of how much mental energy you spent on opinions that had no real weight. The second one helps you recognize and reinforce the moments when you were genuine.
Because what you celebrate and appreciate, you tend to repeat. So by noticing those authentic moments, you slowly build more of them.
That's such a kind and effective practice. Simple enough to actually do. And powerful enough to make a real difference over time.
And I want to add something to that. Be patient with yourself. This is not a problem that gets solved in a weekend. Changing deep patterns takes time. It takes practice. It takes setbacks. There will be days when you care way too much about something that doesn't matter, and you look back and feel frustrated with yourself.
And on those days, try to remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness. As long as you're paying attention, you're making progress. Even when it doesn't feel like it.
Awareness is progress. I want to put that on a wall somewhere.
Let's talk about some real-life scenarios for a moment. Because I think sometimes it helps to ground these ideas in specific situations. Can we do a few?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. First scenario. You're at a dinner with friends or family. Someone expresses an opinion you strongly disagree with. Maybe a political opinion or a judgment about someone else. And you feel the urge to say something. But you also feel the fear of creating tension.
That's such a common situation. And I think different people handle it very differently. Some people speak up and then feel anxious for the rest of the evening. Some people stay quiet and feel frustrated with themselves.
And neither extreme is ideal. Speaking up every single time at the cost of your peace isn't necessarily the answer. But silencing yourself completely to keep everyone happy isn't healthy either.
So, what's the middle path?
I think it's about choosing your battles with intention. Asking yourself, is this something I genuinely need to address? Or can I let this one go without losing my sense of self? Sometimes you can observe something, disagree internally, and simply choose not to invest your energy in changing someone else's opinion.
And sometimes you choose to speak calmly, without anger. Not to win, not to change the person, but because silence would feel like a betrayal of something important.
Exactly. The key is that the choice is made from a grounded place. Not from fear. Not from a need for approval. But from a considered, intentional decision.
Second scenario. You're at work. You get some critical feedback from your manager. And it stings.
Feedback at work can be particularly charged because it combines professional self-worth with our need for social acceptance. Being told you've done something wrong, even constructively, can trigger all the old feelings.
So what do you do?
First, you let yourself feel it. Don't immediately jump into defense mode or into self-criticism mode. Just let the feeling land. Second, give yourself a little time before you respond or react. Third, when you're ready, look at the feedback and ask, is there something useful here? Is there something true here that I can learn from?
Separating the sting from the substance.
Yes. The sting is emotional. The substance is informational. You can acknowledge the sting without letting it prevent you from accessing the information.
And if the feedback is unfair or inaccurate?
Then you can address it. Calmly, professionally, without being defensive. But also without automatically accepting it just because someone in authority said it. Having a strong internal sense of your own competence and integrity means you can receive critical feedback without it destroying you, and you can also push back when necessary.
Third scenario. And this one is personal. You've shared something about yourself, maybe a creative project, or a personal story, or a dream you have, and someone responded dismissively. Maybe they laughed. Maybe they changed the subject. Maybe they said it wasn't realistic.
Oh, that one hurts in a very particular way. Because you were vulnerable. You opened the door. And then someone walked past it without even looking.
And the temptation is to close that door forever. To think, well, I will never do that again. I will never let anyone see something that matters to me.
And that instinct makes total sense. It's protective. But it's also isolating. And it keeps you from the very experiences that make life meaningful.
So, what do you do with that hurt?
I think you first let yourself grieve it a little. Because it is a small loss. Someone had the chance to see you and they didn't take it. That's disappointing. And it's okay to feel that disappointment.
And then?
And then you remind yourself that one person's inability or unwillingness to see your value says nothing about your actual value. Not everyone will be moved by what moves you. Not everyone will understand what you're building. Not everyone is the right audience for your story.
Finding the right audience.
Finding the right audience. For your ideas. For your dreams. For your authentic self. And protecting your openness so that when the right people show up, you can still let them in.
That's such a hopeful way to look at it. Not bitter. Not closed. Just more intentional about who you share with.
Yes. Selective vulnerability. Not because some people are worth more than others, but because not every space is safe. And wisdom is knowing the difference.
Okay. I think we've covered so much ground today. And I want to start bringing us toward a close. But first, let's summarize some of the key ideas from today's conversation.
I'll start. We talked about the spotlight effect, the way we overestimate how much others are watching and judging us. We're all so busy with our own internal movies that we rarely have as much attention for others as we imagine they have for us.
We talked about the evolutionary roots of caring too much. That it was actually a survival tool in ancient times. An understanding that helps us be more compassionate toward ourselves when the anxiety shows up.
We talked about people pleasing, what it is, where it often comes from, and how it can quietly hollow out your relationships and your sense of self over time.
We talked about the importance of values. Having a clear internal compass so that you're making choices from the inside out, rather than constantly adjusting yourself based on the outside world.
We talked about the inner critic, how it's often not originally ours, how it can keep us small, and how gently questioning its voice is part of the healing process.
We talked about authentic connection, how real closeness requires showing up honestly, imperfectly, vulnerably. And how the relationships that grow from that kind of honesty are the ones that truly nourish us.
And we talked about letting go, not becoming indifferent, but learning to feel without being controlled, to care without losing yourself, to be grounded even when the weather of other people's opinions tries to knock you off course.
That's a really beautiful summary. And I think there's a thread running through all of it. And that thread is, you are enough. As you are. Right now. You don't have to earn your worthiness through performance or approval. You don't have to be the best version of yourself to deserve connection. You're allowed to be here, exactly as you are.
I want to say that one more time, clearly, for everyone listening. You are allowed to be here, exactly as you are.
If you take only one thing from this episode, let it be that.
Now, before we close, we always like to ask our listeners one reflective question. Something you can think about, maybe write about, maybe just sit with for a little while.
Today's question is this: in what area of your life do you feel most like you're performing for an audience that isn't really watching?
Take a moment with that. It could be at work. It could be in your family. It could be in how you present yourself online. It could be in how you dress or how you speak or what dreams you let yourself acknowledge.
And then ask yourself, what would I do differently if I knew no one was watching? If there were no judgment, no criticism, no approval to seek? What would you do? Who would you be?
We would love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Seriously, this is a community here. And one of the most powerful things you can do is say out loud the thing you've been holding quietly inside. Even to a screen. Even to strangers. Because naming something is the beginning of changing it.
And if you're feeling seen by today's conversation, if something we said touched you, please know that that's not an accident. These are things that matter to real people, including us.
We're not just talking about you. We're talking about ourselves too. None of us is beyond this. All of us have moments where we care too much, where we perform, where we silence ourselves. The difference is just whether we notice it and what we do next.
And the fact that you're here, listening, thinking, engaging, that means you're already paying attention. And as we said earlier, awareness is progress.
It really is. Okay, let's close out today's episode.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Easy Speak podcast. We hope today's conversation gave you something to think about, something to feel, and something to carry forward.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And share this episode with someone who you think might need to hear it today.
Every single time you listen, you're not just practicing your English. You're also practicing something bigger. You're practicing paying attention to the ideas that shape your life. And that's a beautiful thing.
We'll be back soon with a new conversation, a new topic, and more space for you to slow down, reflect, and grow. Until then, take care of yourself.
And remember, you don't have to perform for an audience that isn't watching. Just show up as you are.
That's always enough.
See you next time.
Bye for now.